everyone, welcome to the second in the Christmas is Coming series. I hope that you've already made a batch of card design number 1, and I'm about to show you another card design that you can batch make in time for Christmas. I have created a PDF file to go along with this series. It contains all the card measurements of the designs that I'll be showing you, as well as a template or two depending. This one has a little star template to go along with it, and you'll be able to print those off to use them when you make this card. You'll find my email address on my right hand sidebar, and just pop me an email and I will send you your PDF file so that you can get going making your cards. So step 1 for this card is to make the card base. Again, you can mix and match your colours as you see fit, but I'm working with black and turquoise and black and pink for this batch of cards. Decide how many cards you're going to make, and you're going to need to cut that number of bases. So as I said, I'm working with black, and I've cut 8 pieces of cardstock that measure 8 inches by 5 3/4 inches. I'm going to be making 4 cards in each of the colourways, and then you're going to score and fold your card in half at the 4-inch mark. So once everything's scored, then I'm going to fold each of those card bases in half. I like to match my 2 cut edges first, and then take my bone folder and run it along that score line, and that way I get a nice even fold. I make sure that the cut edges line up, and then press that fold into place. And then to finish off your card bases, you're going to round all 4 corners. Now you can use perhaps a crocodile corner rounder if you wanted to. They come in lots of different designs, but I'm just going for a straight curved edge and rounding off all 4 corners of each of my card bases. If you found that you couldn't round the folded corner of your card, and mine is quite hard, you see I do really have to press to get them through, but you could also just press down on your punch so that you make a mark on that corner, and then just take your scissors and trim them into shape. So for step 2, we're going to be cutting the piece of card that we're going to use on the front and the insides of our card, and we're going to be stamping the inserts. As I said, I'm going to be making 4 cards in the pink and 4 cards in the blue. You need to cut 2 pieces of card for each card that you're making. So they measure 2 3/4 of an inch by 5 3/4 of an inch, and as I said, you need 2 for each card. So I've got 8 pieces of pink and 8 pieces of blue. Remember, you don't have to make your cards exactly the same colours as I've used. You may well have baker's twine in a different colour to me, in which case you can change the colours of your card base and your toppers to match the baker's twine, or perhaps the embroidery thread that you want to use to make your stars. So to stamp the inserts, we're going to be using a VersaFine black ink pad, and I've got this little star stamp. I've chosen stars to match or to mirror the star embellishment that we're going to have on the front of the card, and you can pick something similar to just decorate the top and bottom corners of your card insert. So I'm literally just working in opposite corners at the top and bottom of the strip, and just stamping a few little stars to decorate the piece of card that you'll be able to use to write your greetings on. The beauty of batch making your cards is that you become quicker and quicker the more times you perform one of the tasks. You also find other ways of making things a little bit quicker, and it was at this point that I realised I could stamp 2 at the same time, and therefore only 1 clean up in between each set of inserts. It's very important to be as clean and precise as you can with this design, because it's quite minimal and any sort of smudges and things are really going to show up on these light colours. Now my pink cardstock was slightly more textured than my blue, and at this point I missed off one of the little stars, so I just went in with my black pen and drew in the part of the design that I've missed. So it's always handy when you're working with black. If you make a little mistake, you can always just draw in the section that you've missed. I kept my greeting for the inside of the card the same as the greeting I'll be using on the front. So I've got this Merry Christmas stamp. You can see I've drawn some lines on it, and you'll see a little bit more about that later on. But for now I'm going to stamp the Merry Christmas right across the middle of each of my little inserts. I tried to pick a text that went with this quite modern design. This almost looks a little bit like a typewriter font. And then I'm just stamping the Merry Christmas in the middle of my little card insert. Now, if you're not very good at getting things straight, you might as well just stamp it crooked and make it as if that's exactly how you meant it to be. So I'm being careful with my stamp because it's quite narrow, just to make sure that I only get ink on the actual words and not on the block. And then I'm going to stamp all of my inserts. So once you have stamped all of your inserts, then you're ready to stick them to the inside of your card. I've chosen to use my PVA glue to do this, but you could equally use double-sided tape if you want to. So I'm just centering it on the inside of the card and then flipping the card over to see if I've got any little extra strip of card. That sometimes happens when you're cutting things out. You might not be completely as precise as you might want to be, and you can see here that this was a card I made a mistake on, so I've just stamped on the back, waste not, want not, and then I'm gluing it into position and trimming off that little excess piece from the inside of the card. So by adding these inserts into my card, it means that I don't have to use a white pen in order to sign my greetings to whoever I might send these to. And by using this method of making an insert, it looks quite modern and matches in with this card design. But equally, if you wanted to, you could make a paper insert. But I tend to make those more if the card design that I'm making is a little more traditional. So step 3 and the final step of this set of steps in this batch making process, and you're going to be making the card toppers. So I have given you a little star template in your PDF file, but you could equally make a little template for yourself. It's a star that measures approximately 2¼ inches across, and we're going to just put the star so that the very top point is about 1 inch from the top of the panel, and that the other two right and left hand points of the star are evenly placed across the width of the strip of card. And then you're going to take your map pin and pierce a hole at each of the points of the star, and it's as easy as that. Now you will find, as I did, that you can pierce more than one piece of card at a time. So depending on the thickness of your card, you need to make that choice, but it does make it go a little bit quicker, and that's what batch making is all about. So again, just dropping that star so it's about 1 inch from the top of the strip and even side to side, and then piercing a hole at each of the points of the star. Now my piece of foam means I've got to move things up a little bit so I can pierce the bottom of the star, so just make sure if you need to do that that you hold the star in place while you move the whole panel upwards. And you're going to repeat that process for all the toppers in your set of cards. Now you know me, I like to leave in my mistakes if I feel that it might just prompt you not to make the same mistakes as I do. Now we're going to be using either sellotape or a post-it note. I'm going to show you both methods in order to mask off part of my stamp. I want to make the Merry Christmas Merry on top and Christmas on the bottom. So I'm going to be stamping the Merry portion of the stamp first, and I've stopped the ink going on the rest of the stamp by using my sellotape. But what I forgot to check first was that I'd cleaned my stamp properly last time that I used it, and hey presto, when I lift up my stamp you'll see that I didn't. which actually I should have known because I'm not the world's best stamp cleaner. And no problems, I'm just flipping my card over because the star's exactly the same backwards or forwards, and then I'm giving my stamp a really good clean and beginning that process all over again. So I'm taking a piece of sellotape and just using it to mask off the word Christmas so that I'm only inking up the word merry. Now the sellotape works quite well, but it does get a little bit messy. I can only really use it once because that ink doesn't dry, and then I have to get another piece of sellotape for the second stamping. So I just thought I would test my stamp this time. You can see I've only got the word merry, and that's what I'm looking for. So I'm just using that same piece of sellotape but the other end this time to mask off the word Christmas and re-inking my stamp. And because I've got the guidelines, it's quite easy to see and centre the word merry. I'm using the black lines as a guide, and I want them the greeting a little further down on the card. And again, if you're not the world's best stamper at stamping straight, then just stamp crooked, and it really won't make a huge difference to the look of this card. Now I found that using the sellotape method was good. It did work. The beauty of it was it does stay in place and I didn't have to hold it, but it does get quite messy because the ink doesn't dry on the sellotape. So I'm going to opt for the second method. So I stamped a few using the sellotape and then moved on to using a post-it note. So I've stamped the word merry on all of my cards, and now I'm just making sure that my stamp is really clean, and then I'm going to switch over to masking the word merry and stamping the word Christmas on my card, this time using the post-it note to mask the word merry. So I think I'm happy that that's clean, and then I'm going to get rid of all of this sellotape, which is still wet, so be careful you don't get it all over your fingers if you've used your sellotape. So now we're switching to the second method of masking, and I'm using a post-it note this time. You could use a sheet of paper really and just hold it in position, but the post-it note with a little bit of sticky on it just means that you don't have to hang on to it if you don't want to. And the fact that the post-it note is paper means that the ink more or less sinks straight into it as if you were stamping, and it means you can use the post-it note more than once. So this time I've just inked the word Christmas, and then I'm stamping it. I'm trying to centre it under the word merry, but again I'm not too fussed if I don't get it spot on, but I'm trying to use the guidelines in order to get that Christmas directly under the word merry. And then repeat that process of masking, inking up your stamp and stamping it onto your card. If you wanted to, you could do as I'm doing here and create another whole set of steps within steps for the batch making process. So far I cut out the toppers, then I pierced the holes for the star, then I stamped the bottom of each of the toppers, and next I'm going to insert a brad into each of those holes and just open the backs of the brads. And it's these brads that we're going to use to form our star when we wrap them with our baker's twine. Now just be careful when you're using your brads that you don't press them down as hard as you might normally. So just keep them opened up, and normally I would stick them onto my craft mat and then press down on the top of them to make sure that those little arms were well and truly flattened, but I want to create a little bit of space behind each of the brads in order to wrap my pieces of twine. Now this card idea is very much in line with something that my mum and dad used to do many moons ago when they had a little hobby of making pictures with nails and thread, and that's what this reminds me of on a very simplified scale. So the brads are my little nails, and then I'm going to be using my baker's twine to make my star design. So it definitely is a simplified version of that, but it's quite a nice little motif to use on a Christmas card, but actually you could use it on other cards or other projects if you wanted to. It'd probably be quite fun to make a series of stars on a scrapbooking page, for instance. Once you've finished inserting your brads, just check that all of your card toppers are the right length for the fronts of your cards. You may have a little bit of trimming to do, and you need to do that at this point before you begin wrapping your stars. So zooming in for a detailed look at how you make these stars, and they really are very easy to do. You want to leave a length of your thread, which I'm using Baker's Twine to match my card in pink and black, and you want roughly between 3.5 to 4 inches of length in your cotton. So I would start out with a longer length and trim it if you, or shorten it if you need to. I've just gone a little bit long there, and you're going to wrap it around that very first top brad. Then you're going to come down to the bottom of your star, and you're going to miss a brad and rotate your card in an anti-clockwise direction, catching every other brad until you end up with a star shape. And then you're going to wrap that piece of twine around that top brad once more. Now this is the most difficult one because obviously you're going to have 2 lots of the thread wrapped around it. So just persevere, support your card while you pull fairly tight to just pop that little piece of twine underneath that brad, and you'll find then that it holds everything in position. Trim the other end of the cotton to match your first piece, and it's at this point that you can push down on those brads if you want to secure the wrapping of the star in position. So I've tied a knot in the top section, and then I'm going to tie a little bow. So this is a little bit fiddly, but the longer the threads you leave, the more thread you're going to waste. So you need to strike a happy medium of how much thread that you leave at the top of your star. So I'm just pulling the ends of my thread to make a nice neat little bow, and I like to finish off by tying a knot in each of the tails of the bow. Again, getting a little bit fiddly, as you can see. I'm just tying a knot, and that's because this thread is 2 threads twisted together and I don't want them to come undone, and it almost forms a little bit of a tassel at the end of the string. So you just need to maneuver the little knot roughly to how long you want the tail of your bow to be, and then just trim off any excess. And you can see that I haven't really got much of an excess on that one, but I'm going to have a little bit more on this other thread, and then I'm going to try and tie the knot in exactly the same position. I've got a little bit more thread to play with this time, and then I'm just going to push it to the length that I want, pull it tight, and then trim off the end to form the little tassel. So you don't want your bow to be too overpowering in size compared to the little star. So I'm going to show you once more, on this time on a blue card, and working with my blue Baker's Twine. So roughly, I would say about 4 inches I'm leaving, and then wrap that around. So I'm working in a clockwise direction, and then I'm rotating my card in an anti-clockwise direction, I think, and wrapping every other brad, continuing to turn the card until I end up again at the top of the star, and then wrapping. Am I turning it clockwise? No, I'm definitely turning it anti-clockwise, and then wrapping the ribbon or the thread around that top brad. So bringing it to the top of the star, and pushing down on those brads to hold everything in place. Trimming the end of the Baker's Twine to match, and then tying a knot and then a bow at the top of the star. So as I tie the bow, just a little word about the tension of the Baker's Twine as you wrap around your star. Now I found that I just put a little bit of pressure as I wrapped the twine around each of the brads. Nothing that made the card buckle in any way, just enough to keep the baker's twine from being floppy, and then literally as soon as it popped under that brad it held it in position and stopped it from sliding and coming undone and getting loose. So I didn't have any problems with it unwrapping as I worked my way around the star. If you did find that things were entirely too loose for your liking, then you could just employ the same technique as you do with your laces, and starting at the first brad that you wrap around, start to just pull the thread a little bit tighter all the way around the star and work your way around the star, and the brad should hold that newly tightened string in position. So that's my stars all wrapped and my toppers all stamped. And you could stop at this point if you wanted to and attach the topper to your card, but I just felt that it needed one more finishing touch, and because I had enough of the baker's twine to do it, I decided to add a little baker's twine border down the actual length of the card topper. So I'm using some strong double-sided tape just to hold the twine in position, and this is a little bit fiddly because it's right on the edge of the card. I want to keep it as near to the edge of the card as I can without falling off, of course, and I'm just using the double-sided tape to hold the twine in position, and I'm going to repeat that on the opposite side of the topper. So I'm using the double-sided tape to hold the twine in place, and then as you can see I'm wrapping it around the card. Now you will find, or you may find, that your card buckles ever so slightly while you do this. Now that's okay, because once we stick it to the front of our card the twine will straighten out. What you don't want is your card folded in half by the time you've wrapped your twine along that edge, then it definitely is too tight. So it's just got a slight little curve that the thread is pulling the topper into, but it will easily straighten out once that topper is attached to the card. So I'm using strong double-sided tape to attach the topper to the card, mainly because of the brads and the twine, and I'm running it along the very edge of the panel, and as I've added the two long lengths of tape, I'm going to remove the backing from the tape that is holding the thread in position, and that's to make sure that I've just got that little bit of extra adhesion by attaching the topper to the card. Now just be a little bit careful not to just rip it off, but just to ease it gently from underneath the other strip that you've laid down. And then once you've done that, you can add another piece of tape to the bottom and the top of the card panel. And then making sure that your card greeting is in the same direction as your card topper, remove your double-sided tape and attach the panel to the front of the card. And you'll see that as you push that into place, your little card strings are no longer buckled. Now I didn't like the fact that they were quite so free from the front of the card, so I'm just adding a couple of dots of glue along the length of the string. So to recap that process, this time on the pink card topper, using little bits of tape to just hold the length of the baker's twine along the very edge of the card topper. Then running double-sided tape along the long edges of the topper and removing the top layer of the double-sided tape that's holding your twine in position. And then adding another length of double-sided tape to the short edges of the topper. And then attaching the topper in position, making sure that the Merry Christmases are the same way around, and then just adding a couple of dots of glue underneath the string just to hold that in position once it's dry. And once you've completed that step, you will have this batch of cards completely finished. So I made 8 in total, so I've got 4 pink and 4 blue, and I really hope that you've enjoyed making this little batch of cards, and I'll see you again shortly for number 3 in this series, and hopefully together we'll have our Christmas cards ready in time for sending in the month of December. As usual, if you like my videos and haven't subscribed already, then hit that subscribe button. If you're already a subscriber and want to share this series of videos with your friends, hit the share button and the like button, and we'll be crafting together again very soon. I look forward to sharing more crafting with you. Don't forget to stay tuned to the end of the video for the links if you want to pop back to my blog and email me for that PDF file. I look forward to seeing you again soon. Thank you for watching. So click on this link to go back to my blog to pick up that email address so that you can email me for your PDF file for this card series. I've also included a link here for my Christmas card playlist. It's quite a short one at the moment, but it'll be growing throughout this series. And I also have a Christmas project playlist, and included in that is how to make this gorgeous clock using a Tim Holtz altered clock base. So I hope that's put you in the mood for Christmas, and I will see you again soon.